Hello there and welcome to Bobeats. Today we're checking out the Argon8. It's a digital synth from Modal Electronics and it's beautiful, surprisingly so, in an unapologetically digital kind of way. And there are three reasons why it's been growing on me a lot as an instrument. Firstly, the build of the synth, it's heavy, it's sturdy, it's metal, the chassis is so well made. Secondly, the keyboard, it has a Fatar keypad and it's very rare to find something this good on a sub 1,000 euro synth. But most importantly is of course the beautiful sounds that it produces thanks to its unique 32 oscillator design. At the core of the Argon8 experience are 32 high-resolution wavetable oscillators, 4 per voice. But you only have access to 2 oscillators on the front panel, so what gives? Well, in practice, if we're playing oscillator number 1, you're not really hearing the 32 oscillators. So in order to hear them a little bit more, we can actually spread them. And suddenly we have a much wider sound from just one oscillator. Here's with some more complex wavetables. And speaking of the waveforms, we have 28 banks of complex waveforms that you can pick from. So for example, you can go from something super basic like this here, to something a little bit more crazy. And I think that the real magic is having these complex wavetables that you can combine and you can manipulate in many different ways that we'll take a look at. Oftentimes when you showcase it, it seems like subtle things. But it's when you have all of these options and you start combining the subtle changes that you get something interesting. And you can also spread the oscillators in intervals, so still just listening to wave 2. Another cool thing is that we can add voice drift. This adds a random detuning to each oscillator. The effect is pretty subtle, but it does add character to the sound. Now let's get into some more sound shaping tools. We have two things that are easily confused. One is called wave mod and the other one is called oscillator mod. The wave mods are accessed using the wave buttons. If we hold down patch and we turn it, we can see here that we have a bunch of different wave mods. These are static changes that are applied to the waveform basically. So static effects for the waveform that basically redraws the waveform. Now, as you might have realized already, we have a lot of commands that require you to hold down a button and turning something. And as you can see, this command here makes me unable to play while I'm turning the knob. But we can always use the screen to do this as well. So we have OSC1, click it, wave mod, and then we use this knob here to change it. There are 32 of these wave mods that are applied to wave 1 and wave 2 individually. You can't change the amount, it's just a static change to the waveform. Let's add a wave mod to Oscillator 2. To shape our sound even further, we have the oscillator modifiers. So these are selectable, and you can think of them as different kinds of cross modulations. So wave 1 is the carrier and wave 2 is the modulator. Basically, for most of the oscillator modifiers, wave 2's frequency will impact wave 1. So for example, we have phase modulation, and to showcase this, I'm tuning up oscillator number 2 here to give us this kind of result. We could apply the inverter. I quite like that, so we'll stick with the inverter for this patch that we're working on here. I also want to mention that we have different voice modes. So we have mono. You can apply some glide to it if you want to. And let's say we do an interval. And then we have unison, unison 2, 4, and 8. And we can also stack voices. So stack 2 means we have 4 notes of polyphony. And stack 4 means that we have 2 notes of polyphony. And this can of course be combined with the different intervals. But we're sticking with this pad sound for now. We also have the width parameter that gives us stereo spread to the sound. So this is of course an extreme stereo spread. So something like this maybe. And if you haven't noticed, we have some reverb on the sound, but we'll get to the effects in a little while. Now let's talk about the filter. So we have the cutoff here, you can see the representation of what's going on, resonance, and the morph. So it's a morphable filter. So here we have a low cut, and here we have a high cut. But we can also go into the menu here and we can select the type of filter that we want. So let's just listen to it, what it sounds like. So here's with the classic filter. And here's with the standard notch. So you can see that there's a little notch down there. You can even hear the little notch in this fluctuation of the sound, which I think is lovely. So we have standard, standard with a notch, we have classic and classic with a notch. But we'll go with standard with a notch for now. All in all, I find that the filter is very flexible and musical. Especially when you've modulated it. I think I modulated both the cutoff and resonance on this patch. If I haven't, let's do it. Let's modulate the resonance. Lovely. Next up, let's talk envelope. We have attack, decay, sustain, release here. You select them like this. So we have the filter EG. Here, for example, we have the amp EG. These are, of course, predetermined, preset. So we have the amp EG here. We have the filter EG. And we can, of course, set the intensity or amount here to positive or negative. Pretty nice. Let's lower it a bit. And this far, let's save a patch. Very simple. Press save. And I just called my patches B. Save patch, confirm. And then we have the mod EG, so let's press it to assign it, and all mod slots are full. And here's a negative of this synth. It doesn't really have that many mod slots, which I find, yeah, I think they should really increase it quite a bit for the amount of things you can modulate, because I find that I actually run out of modulations pretty quickly. So let me briefly touch on the mod slots. So we have 8 mod slots here. So we can see that we set LFO1 to oscillator 1 wave, LFO1 to oscillator mix. We can say LFO1 to oscillator 2 wave. Let's clear mod slot 6. And I'm gonna apply some envelope to the shape of oscillator 2. I'm not sure if we'll hear a lot, but it's one cool interaction you can do, which I really love. I love when you have a synth that can do envelopes to control, for example, LFO. So you can have an LFO come in slower or change its rate or change its shape over time using an envelope. And let's talk about modulations here for a second. We have the LFO, so you just assign it by pressing it and then turning a knob, the knob that you want to modulate. And then we have rate and depth for both of the LFOs, as well as the shift commands. If I hold shift, you can see that I can change the shape. I think that there are 4 shapes available, so you can go from this sine all the way to random if you want to. And then you can also set the mode. So we have retrig mode, so it basically retrigs with every note press. We have the free running mode, and then we have the single mode, so it's just a single cycle. And when you've assigned something to the LFO here, it shows up here in the mod matrix. So we can see here LFO1 to oscillator 1 wave, see its status is it's on. We can see the source is LFO1, we see that the destination is oscillator 1 wave, and we see the depth. So we can control the depth either by simply hitting this button and turning whatever whatever the destination is, or we can go into the menu and do it this way. We can also clear it. But we also have other ways to control the sound. So for example, we can select Aftertouch here. And now we can assign it to, say, the cutoff. It's that simple. We can also assign velocity, note, and expression the same way to modulate something. And then we have the joystick. And it's very easy to assign. Just press the shift button, press here for example. So now we have X plus. And let's see here, let's put it to cutoff. But we run into all mod slots are full very frequently when we're setting up these modulations. I feel that it's a limitation that holds back parts of this synth. And if we could get more mod slots in an update, that'd be really cool. But it should be noted that we also have 4 lanes of automation that we can record, so you could use that to set up modulations as well. Let me pause the walkthrough here for a second and answer a frequently asked question, which is wave state or Argon8? Here's my perspective. While you can create wavetables on the wave state, the wave state and the Argon8 are fundamentally different kinds of synths. With the wave state, you basically stitch samples together, and that way you could create a complex wavetable that you could sweep through of sorts. Whereas on the Argon8 you have the 32 oscillator wavetable design from the get-go. So in practice these are very different synths, because even though both are digital and both can sort of do wavetables, they don't share that much of the same DNA. A far better comparison would be between the Argon8 and the Hydra synth, because both share a similar wavetable design. And between the two I would say that it's mostly up to you what sounds good to your ear and how much money you have to spend, where the Argon8 is a little bit cheaper and you have a little bit more features but also higher price tag on the Hydra synth, but both are excellent wavetable synthesizers. Before we talk about the sequencer and the excellent arpeggiator, we're gonna touch on the effects. We have 3 effects that you can access here and a distortion which is pre-effects. I really like the distortion of this synth. It reminds me of the distortion on the Digitone. It's beautiful. It doesn't crush the sound or destroy it, it just adds interesting harmonics to it. When it comes to effects, we have the reverb, which is already on the sound, we have chorus, we have flangers, we have a couple of delays, as well as a lo-fi effect. I really like that, I love the bit crushing effect. And we have a phaser, and it's good to note that if you already have a reverb, for example, loaded in one of the 3 slots, you can't load it into another one. The same goes for all the other effects. So let's add some bit crushing to our sound. And let's add a phaser to this sound. Next up, let's talk about our arpeggiator. So I'll turn it on. There are of course different time divisions, as well as setting it to different directions and go up and down octaves. But it's also programmable, so if I hold down the ARP key, I can program it. And I can add rests. This way you can create some pretty complex arpeggios. This synth also has a sequencer. It can record up to 512 notes, it has input quantization, as well as 4 lanes of automation. If you're using the Modal app, which is available for computers and smartphones and tablets, you can actually go in and tweak the automations quite a lot, but don't expect to do very precise changes to the automations per step. Something like the Minilogue XD is a little bit more advanced in this regard, and it's nowhere near as detailed as on, say, an Electron synth. One feature I really like is that you can turn on the arpeggiator and actually record it into the sequencer, which is very handy. And to end things off, we have an audio input. It's a stereo input. It goes through the effects but not through the filters. You can add the effects of the unit to an external sound source. And the knobs respond to and send MIDI CC messages. So last in this video, let's talk about some pros and some cons. The knobs, and Modal, you know this was coming. They are not quite there yet. I think that they should be heavier and offer more resistance and better grip. So I'm not talking about the encoders, the actual like physical part beneath the cap. I'm talking about the actual cap here. And I think they should be heavier, offer more resistance, and offer more grip. The more I use this synth though, the less I care. So in all fairness, I think it's more of an aesthetic and feelings kind of thing than a practical problem. And speaking of aesthetics, while the buttons look good, they have sharp edges to them and a very distinct clicky sound that puts Electron to shame. Whether or not you like that is of course up to you, but I would have loved less sharp edges and less distinct click. Another potential negative is the amount of shift commands that you have to do in order to change things from the synth itself. Now, this is something you do get used to. When I started out, it was confusing, but now it's very fluid. If you really don't like shift commands, you should look at something like the Minilogue XD, because it's more immediate in that sense. And my last potential negative is the mod slots. Not everybody will use up more than 8 mod slots, but I do. I would have loved more of them. And now let me talk about the pros, the positives. So firstly, I really like this synth. I like the sound, I like working with it. The more I work with it, the more I realize that it will take me on these weird swirling wavetable journeys, and that's really cool. It's an instrument and it has a unique character to the sound, a unique character of its own when you're working with it. And that's what I'm looking for. And to be frank, I've used it a lot more on my music, for example, than the wave state. Not because the wave state is bad, but because I'm not really looking for that kind of versatile synth. I'm looking for something a little bit more hands-on, quicker, and this just adds that kind of digital flair that I want to some of my tracks. So yeah, it's actually growing on me and I really like it. I test a lot of synths and the body of this synth combined with excellent keybed is just unrivaled. There's nothing this good at this price point, I dare say, in terms of the keybed and just the massive feel of the body. It's heavy, it sits very well on the table. So those are some really strong points of this synth. Final thoughts. Who is this for? Well, if you think that the wave state seems too complicated, you can't afford a Hydra synth, and you like the idea of a synth that is in the same sort of vein category, shares DNA with something like a Minilogue XD, it's hands-on, it's quick to use, then I think that the Argon8 could be very interesting for you. If you want the most versatile synth with a ton of different types of sounds that cover a lot of ground sonically, then maybe this is not for you. But if you like something with a distinct digital character that feels like it's a proper instrument, it has a good keyboard, good overall build quality, and a pretty user-friendly workflow once you get over the first little hurdle of learning the shift commands, then this could be for you. And last in today's video, I want to encourage you to go and check out Skillshare. It's a learning community. They offer a ton of different classes from music production, mixing, to photography and video. And here's a class on mixing that I watched that I think is particularly interesting if you're a beginner. So if you want to go and check out Skillshare, I have a link in the description. If you use it, you get a 2-month free trial.